Hello and welcome. My name is Jade and today I'm going to be doing a bit of a summer wrap-up. I'm truly sorry if the lighting is weird in this video and possibly the next one. We're actually in the middle of a typhoon here in Japan, and so it's really stormy and really rainy outside, and it's making the lighting kind of weird. But since we are scooting into autumn, I figured the atmosphere might help. I can't guarantee crackling thunder, but I can guarantee that I have lots of books I'm excited to talk about, and I am ready to get started. I'm gonna go over my 5 stars first. Normally I would go in reverse, but I have actually talked about all of my 5 stars in previous videos, and so I'm going to highlight them very quickly here because I recently have spoken about them. My first 5 star of the summer was Nona the Ninth. This is by Tamsin Muir, and this is the 3rd book in the Locked Tomb trilogy. The first book being Gideon the Ninth. This series is definitely one of my all-time favorites. You can find me talking about it just about anywhere. So all I'm going to say about Nona for now is that it is found family. It's incredibly cozy while also dystopian. It's probably my least favorite of the 3, but it's still a 5, and I feel so strongly about all of the characters. I cannot wait for the 4th book, Alecto, to come out and for me to feel more fuzzy feelings along with confusion and panic. Next, I have To Shape a Dragon's Breath. I read this book recently in a dragon-filled vlog where I went through my entire August reading dragon books for Draconathon, and actually all of them were 5 stars. So To Shape a Dragon's Breath follows our main character Anarchus, and she is going to a dragon academy. Her world used to have dragons in abundance, but it is now incredibly rare and people believed that they were gone. There is another subset of dragon, but they are considered to be like heavily bred and not naturalized dragons, kind of like what they've done to the pug versus seeing a wolf in the wild. So she gets a wolf of a dragon and ends up attending an academy in order to learn how to shape a dragon's breath. This book was 5 stars. It is a slow burn rebellion that I hope gets its sequel. It's such an amazing read. I highly recommend it. Don't go into it expecting action-packed. Go into it expecting academy vibes, dragons, high society, and our main character dealing with colonization and still holding on to her culture. Absolutely phenomenal, fantastic. After that, I also read The Last Spy Hunter. This is a Thai-inspired dragon fantasy, and when I say dragon, I do mean draconic. It has draconic creatures. There is a Naga guardian in this book, but there's also different, more demonic entities called Fee, and our main character X is a Fee hunter or demon slayer, and he is going around trying to slay demons and slay an ultimate, like, high demon in order to gain rank for himself. Then he ends up leading a pregnant woman through a demon-infested wood, and while she's on a quest, she definitely diverts his path and they are on an adventure. This book was incredibly fun, funny, fast-paced. I got like excited about like the chemistry between the characters, and I read it until 4 a.m. Again, you can watch my recent vlog in order to get more in-depth thoughts on this, but ultimately it was a 5 star and I'm really happy I read it. Then I read a short poetry collection called The Stories That Told Me. This is by Kayla Kempers, and it is a series of poems going throughout different stages of her life, and felt like a diary of reflections that were incredibly relatable, and just getting to see those different moments in her life play out in a very raw, vulnerable way, as well as having some incredibly inspiring poems. If you're a writer, I would suggest picking this one up, not only because you'd be supporting an indie author, because Kayla Kempers is an indie author as well as a YouTuber. I'll have her linked below. But she also has some really encouraging poems that spoke specifically to me as I go through my writing journey that I just felt like came at the perfect time, and I would feel remiss in not recommending her to people. And I gave it 5 stars. Although I don't normally rate poetry, I was inspired. Moving on from my 5-star reads, I have my 4.5s. We've deviated. Not a huge deviation, but a difference. At some point this summer, I read a thriller suspense novel called Home is Where the Bodies Are, and this is following a cast of characters. We get 3 siblings POVs as they deal with the loss of their mother and clearing out the family home. None of these siblings have really interacted since way before their mother had passed, and their father had also gone missing, would say about a decade prior. They end up watching old home videos and stumble across a really jarring mystery that they all decide to try and figure out. But really this is a family dynamic story that really picks apart where these characters are in their lives and how they interact with each other. It's a family drama that was incredibly compelling to read. The reason why it wasn't a 5 for me is there was just such an offensively dull side character that was meant to play a larger role in the story, and it just felt like he was moved around for the motivations of the plot and never actually matched up with his actions, as well as him being a romantic interest that felt like it was the deadest thing in the story, which is saying something since the mom dies on page, which is something I'd say as a content warning. You do actually witness the death on page, and if that's something you don't want to read, then I would take caution on that one. I wasn't expecting it, and it was like the first scene of the book. But otherwise, an absolutely fast, quick-paced, interesting read that I would have given 5 stars if it weren't for that terrible flat side character. It just irked me. My next 4.5, it's so close, but what I will say is unarguably a 5-star brilliant book is The Shadow of the Gods by John Gwynne. I read this before, and I am here in my shame. I think I'd given this a 3, something that I didn't really feel good about after giving it because of the space I was in when I first read this book. Rereading this book was an entirely different experience, and I can say that this was almost a 5. There is one perspective in here that I did not care about until more than halfway through, and I continue to not really care about her as much as the other characters. She felt like plot, but this is not a plot-heavy book. Despite the plots all coming together and being really epic, I would have to say that this is more of a violent slice of life. It's definitely inspired by Norse mythology, and that's shown in the character descriptions and the food and the world. You spend a lot of time outside. It felt bitter and cold and wet. It felt really cool. There was a lot of things in here that I didn't catch world building wise that really enriched the story, and I would highly recommend this. If it was not for having to kind of like trudge through one character's perspective, that ended up being incredibly relevant. I will say, it was just a slog to get there, and I didn't really appreciate that. But apart from that, this is up from a 3 to a 4.5 and would have been a 5-star in the long run, but I think that the next book is a 5. I can feel it in my bones. I'm really glad I reread this one, and I talk about it a little bit more on my live, but I didn't finish it on the live, so it's scattered in between my channel, and so I wanted to give it credit here. It's really hard to sum up this book's synopsis, but I still want to try and give one. It follows 3 perspectives. We have a mother named Orca who is on a rampage in order to gain justice and vengeance for something that's happened to her. Then we have the character Varg. He was enslaved and he escaped, and he joins a group of warrior called the Bloodsworn. And then finally we have Elvar. Elvar is here to earn battle glory and kind of find her place in the world. She's very proud and ambitious, and she has a quest and a mission that she's after, and the 3 of these characters, while separated, all have this world in common, as well as things that like thread together all the way until the end, which the end is a little bit devastating. But it all felt really worth it and really aggravating and like epic. I'm glad I took my time with it, and I do suggest taking your time with this one. I don't know why I've read it 2 times for the same readathon where I only am giving myself a month, but I actually finished this a little bit after the readathon, and it was well worth the slow burn. I spoke about this way longer than I meant to, but here we are. Moving into my 3 stars, I only have one, and it's another dragon book. I didn't read this for Draconathon. I read it right before Draconathon, and I didn't vlog it, I just read it in my own downtime. This was Dragonfall by R.L. Lom, and it is a queer normative book that has 2 POVs. One is Arcady, and another one is Everin. One of them is a dragon. You get a dragon's perspective in this. It's also a romance, and it was a lot of fun to read, but it also took, I felt like, a lot of time, and I couldn't quite figure out why because it's so thin. And I just never was gripped to pick it up, although I was really enjoying like the idea of it, and a couple of the different quips and banter moments between the characters was fun. I also felt a frustration with like not communicating properly, things feeling a little convenient plot-wise, and then the world building not grasping me despite it being queer normative, which is something I'm really looking for in books. I liked this. I definitely will read L.R. Lamb again, and I feel like this was a good book, especially when I was next to all of these giant 5 stars. It just didn't match up, but I still enjoyed myself. I had two stars. I don't give out 2 stars very often unless they really irk me. 2 stars, I'm annoyed and offended that I finished it, but it didn't do something like grossly offensive to the world. It just offended me that I finished it. I don't know if that makes sense. I'll just say I was surprised to give 2 stars over the summer. That wasn't my intention, but it wasn't my fault. These books were kind of dumb. The first one is The Woman in the Library. I don't know what else to say besides the fact that I had guessed the killer, the murderer, this murder mystery. Sorry, they're giving announcements about the typhoon. So if you hear an announcement in the background, I should probably listen to the announcement about the typhoon. Pause. Okay, we're not gonna die. Yeah, so I guessed the murderer by at least the 2nd chapter. I never wavered in thinking that this person was the murderer, and then when the reveal happened, I was just annoyed. I was so annoyed. And the characters were so flat. It was so not worth it to have read this book, but I did. And you know, that's on me, but it's also on the book, so I gave it a 2. What's this book about? There's a group of individuals in a library. One of them is a writer, and they are writing about individuals within the library to like create characters, and these characters hear a scream, but no one knows where the scream came from. Nobody made a fuss about it, and then they see on the news the next day that someone did indeed get murdered in the library. So they try and piece together what happened, and maybe you won't guess who the murderer is right away, but I will tell you, I'm not incredibly observant, so I don't know what happened, but it was right there, and I really wish it hadn't have been. Next, this one's kind of controversial and I'm a little bit scared. Okay, so I keep reading Riley Sager books. This was a sliding scale of an issue with this book in particular, which I should name Middle of the Night by Riley Sager. The premise of this book sounded really good. 2 kids are in a tent doing a camp out in their backyard, and the friend wakes up to see his friend is missing. He doesn't remember anything. He slept through the night. It turns into a cold case, and then he's in his late 30s, early 40s, and he returns back to the town, and the case has been reopened. And he tries to find out what happened to his friend Billy. I started off really liking this book. I would say the first few chapters, I was intrigued. The opening scene, I was like, this is gonna be a 5. And it's Riley Sager's first, from what I understand, this is Riley Sager's first book from a male perspective, and I could tell. I was like, yes, he's not dumb. It must be a man. I was enjoying it, and it was a 5. And then they introduced a woman. She was there. She was really annoying, and it kind of became more of a 4. And then you have children who don't act like children, and the only reason why this entire book worked, its heavyweight champion, was children acting nothing like children. And by the end, I was so bored of his main character. It ended up being a 2. The reveal wasn't that great either. I felt like it was overly dramatic, and I just wanted it to end, but I did want to understand and want to know what happened. It probably would have been a 3, except for there were so many annoying instances that it's spite. It's a spite too, and I'm really sorry if you liked this book. I think it's great when other people like books I don't like, because that means that it was written for someone. There's always going to be people who dislike really popular books, and that's usually not me. Today it was me. And that was my 2 star. But we are not ending on a negative note. I'm not ending this entire video on a 2 star by Riley Sager. I also want to go over some of the other things I did this summer, because I felt like this was an especially special and accomplishing summer that I really just want to highlight and talk about. This summer was awesome. I felt really, really good, and here's why. First, I got about 40 to 45% of my 2nd book in my series done. I had a rough 0 draft, and I'd been working on a 1st draft over the past year, but I really had to shift my focus to my 1st book, which I should hold up. My 1st book, which is The Solstice Court. I will get into The Solstice Court here in a second, but getting that much writing done, especially especially in August, felt so good and so accomplishing. I did originally set out to finish my book in August, but I like where I'm at so much right now in my writing process and how this book is turning out that I decided I needed to just breathe and stop having imposter syndrome and just like write at my own pace. I just accomplished something that I've been trying for a very long time. I wrote an entire book. It's going to be published in September, and I was spending so much time trying to get book 2 ready that I wasn't realizing that I had already gotten book 1 out, and I've already made so much progress in book 2. So once I sat down and really looked at what I'd written so far and saw how good I felt about it, I just calmed to the hell down, and I feel really accomplished in getting 42% of the way through book 2. On a publishing standpoint, yeah, my book is ready. It's up for pre-order. You can get the ebook copy. You can get a paperback copy, which, I mean, I finally got the spine correct. Look at that spine. That's centered as it will ever be. It's like pocket-sized and adorable. I love her. You can also get the hardback copy, which is also great and also centered. I've never published a book before. This was such an accomplishment for me, and when I finally clicked like the enable distribution button that allows for pre-orders, mind you, kind of lost my mind a little bit. Like, I had a moment where I knew I was enabling it for distribution. I'm done, and it feels so good to have published a book, and it happened this summer. This summer, I have tirelessly gone through ARC readers, created a TikTok, which may or may have not done psychic damage to my soul. I practiced marketing and took a marketing class. I've been trying to talk about my book more and do all of the publishing things that go with publishing a book. I worked with Ingram Spark. I formatted. I did a lot. And a lot of it was done this summer, a lot of little tweaking. I got my first reviews this summer. I've really appreciated all of the ones I've gotten. Point being, I published a book, which seems wild to me. So I'm just gonna roll with it and be like, yeah, that's something I accomplished this summer. Just to throw it in there, I did lots of extra little day trips that I'm really glad I did. A lot of the time I feel like I need to like gear myself up to plan something and like go out into the world. I'm a homebody. I'm an introvert. This summer we went to the beach. We went hiking, we went to the river, we went to festivals and different towns. I really felt like we went out and like just did something, and I'd love to do that more moving forward. I want this to kind of be a little bit more of a year where I like push myself to go out more and touch grass. So how was your summer? I want to know about it. What is something that you accomplished this summer? Big or small, it's an accomplishment and you did it, and I would love to hear about it. So please put your comments down below. Let me know what you did this summer, and if you're looking for to fall, go ahead and stick a pumpkin emoji down in the comments. But whether you do or not, I hope you're enjoying the sun or more stars wherever you are. And until next time, bye!